All right, folks, this is Sherman Ray. This is the Livin in Vegas podcast. Time to get the show started. Well, good morning, everybody. This is Sherman Ray. It's the Livin in Vegas podcast where we talk about the people, the places, the trends, the events that shape the city of Las Vegas. When you think of living in Vegas, we remind you, think living local. And I'm the publisher of Livin in Vegas magazine. I'm Sherman Ray, and I'm your host, just kind of your lovable fuzzball of goodness. And I want to welcome all our friends who are on Facebook, who are checking us out as always. We've got a great group of people that are on Facebook, and don't want to ever seem like I forget about them, because I don't. Generally on Facebook pretty much every day, just talking to people and catching up with them. We actually have a question of the day on our Facebook group page, so run over there if you get a chance to our Facebook group page. Just look for Livin in Vegas, the page, the group page, and I'm going over there right now, as a matter of fact. And you can actually get in on the question of the day. And the question of the day, for those of you who'd like to know, is if you only had one meal to eat, your last meal, what would it be? Where would you go? And what would it be when you would eat? So that's the question. So it's in Vegas. It's got to be in Vegas, so of course. And where else would it be? It's just so many places you go in the world, but it's really only one place you want to be at. I'm logging on to our group pages, our Facebook pages, our business page, Livin Weekly page, and just want to say hello to everybody who's on those pages right now. So thank you so much for being a part of it. If this might be your first time you're ever even visiting the page, I'm Sherman Ray. I'm the publisher of Livin in Vegas magazine, and it is on. You can check it out on our website at livininvegas.com. That's livininvegas.com, and you can check out the current issue of Livin in Vegas magazine. And we're already working on our July issue. We really are. We're working really hard right now to put out the print edition of Livin in Vegas magazine, and you can actually be a part of it. We'll make an announcement about that in just a minute, so that you can actually be a part of that. But this is a current edition. If you have never received an edition of or an issue of Livin in Vegas magazine, it's really easy to do. It really is. All you've got to do is send me your info to info@livininvegas.com. It's info@livininvegas.com, and we can get that in your hands. You'll be on our mailing list. We send out our mailing list, our newsletter every day. Yeah, every day newsletter goes out, and so we encourage you, if you've never received a newsletter from us, you've never received a copy of Livin Vegas or Livin Weekly. Okay, so Livin Weekly magazine is actually coming out too. So this is actually the current edition of Livin Weekly magazine. We encourage you, just sign up. info@livininvegas.com. It's info@livininvegas.com. And you can actually have all of that stuff in your pocket. Okay. And some of you're trying to find out, well, how do I get to the website? Right over my shoulder here, folks. Right above me here. Right there. Okay. Is just the QR code there, and you can actually follow that and get to the page. Okay. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. We really do. Let's pay a couple of bills here really quick, folks, and we will be back with the show. Okay, here we go. Hi, I'm Sherman Ray for Livin in Vegas podcast. Are you a business owner that's looking to get the word out about his product, service, or even just a great message out there? Well, we'd like to give you that opportunity by being a guest on Livin in Vegas podcast. It's super simple. All you've got to do is contact us at advertising@livininvegas.com. That's advertising@livininvegas.com, and we'll schedule you for an interview on Livin in Vegas podcast. I'm Sherman Ray for Livin in Vegas podcast, where we talk about the people, the places, the trends, and the events that shape the city of Las Vegas. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. if you're when you think of living in Vegas, think living local. Really, we talk about all the local things, and if it's not local, we probably won't talk about it. It's not that there's not nothing else going on in the world, because there's tons of stuff going on in the world, but really, it's all about Las Vegas. And actually, our first story today is about somebody who many of you probably know this guy. This is Steve Wynn. And so Steve Wynn is in the news, and I think a lot of people forgot that Steve Wynn is still hanging around. He's actually being sued. For those of you who don't know who Steve Wynn owned the Golden Nugget downtown. He's basically a self-made billionaire. I mean, just a tremendous entrepreneur. Owns the Wynn Resorts, the ones that are on the Strip. So he's got his hand in everything. So he stepped down, I don't know, 2 years ago or so, 4 years ago, over sexual allegations that he got a little handsy with the girls. Okay, and these guys, once you get up, sometimes guys do that. So he is now back in the limelight because he's being sued by the federal government for not filing as a foreign agent, lobbying for China to help one of his people here in the United States. Now, this is probably, I don't know how big of a story it is. I think, does it matter? Oh, sure it does. I mean, if the government's going to sue you because you're not filing the right paperwork, yeah, everything's important. So, as the story goes, there was a gentleman who worked for, or I wish I could tell you. So let's do this. Rather than me go through the whole story, because it takes a long time. It's really kind of a long, convoluted story. We will actually send this out to our people on our mailing list. You can read the whole story. It really is a very interesting story. But Steve Wynn, who's a local boy, still, as far as I know, he's still got interest here in Las Vegas. He does not part of Wynn Resorts at all now, even though it's got his name on it and stuff. But he's not a part of it at all anymore. But he's still being pursued by the federal government for some of the stuff that he's doing. So this is an important story. It really is. And I'll tell you in a minute why. Over at Floyd Lamb Park at Tule Springs. Okay, I don't know why they call it Floyd Lamb Park at Tule Springs. We used to just call it Tule Springs. Because there was no Floyd Lamb Park when I was a kid. So they're having problems with the ducks out there, or the geese. Excuse me. The geese. And the problem with the geese, they're pooping, they're getting hit by people, and they're trying to create an environment where people are happy so they don't have to stamp on duck or geese poop. So they have these things that they're sticking up in the trees now, and they are goose busters, and they are trying to help keep the geese out of the trees, out of the area, out of the grass, so, because they are laying poop all over the place. Now, when people go to places like Sunset Park or over at Tule Springs or any number of the parks that are here, one of the things that these places attract are two things. One are people, and the other ones are wildlife, because they have a lot of water in those areas. And so now what the city's doing is they're saying, hey, well, we're trying to keep the animals away from the people, but the people who are trying to find a balance between the two. Because the reason why you go out there is not only because it's nice and cool and there's grass and there's trees and everything else. It's because there are animals out there. So, and right now there's a lot of goslings that are being hatched and they're chasing around after mom and dad and stuff like that. So you got to find a fine balance, because you still have to protect those animals, and you really do. Case in point, I ride my bike every day, guys, and many of you know, if you were on Facebook this morning, you're on my personal page, I posted a picture of where I was at this morning. So I rode up to the top of Lake Mead, West Lake Mead today, which is a pretty good ride up that hill. I usually ride up Lone Mountain, but I've ridden that up like 100 times. Lake Mead, a little more daring, a little more incline. I get up to the top of that. So normally when I ride back, though, especially if I go to Lone Mountain, I have to ride through the Desert Shores area. And Desert Shores has a ton of lakes, little lake, the whole place is set up on a whole lake type thing. Yesterday, I came riding back, and when you ride back in the mornings, you have to be very careful because the geese and ducks are still just waking up. And as you're riding on a bicycle, I'm going 25, maybe 30 miles an hour. You have to actually be very careful because you'll hit one of these guys. I've never done it before, but I've had to avoid them many occasions. I mean, especially early in the morning, because they sit there in the middle of the road and they look at you like, hey, I'm here. I'm not moving. Well, this morning, yesterday morning, a duck and a car were playing chicken. Yeah, and the duck lost. It was sad, and it was messy. It was everywhere. It was horrific. It was just horrific to see. And so there was a car stopped off to the side, a lady on the phone, tears are going down her face, because nobody wants anything to happen to these animals, because all they're doing is being animals. They're just hanging out. They're hanging out, probably finding chicks. I'm saying that euphemistically, of course, but it is what it is, and you just don't want to have that happen. We're going to take one more break, folks, and then we'll be back and we'll talk a little more and we'll end the show. Okay. Hi, everybody. It's Sherman Ray for Livin in Vegas podcast. Are you a business owner that's looking to get the word out about his product, service, or even just a great message out there? Well, we'd like to give you that opportunity by being a guest on Livin in Vegas podcast. It's super simple. All you've got to do is contact us at advertising@livininvegas.com. That's advertising@livininvegas.com, and we'll schedule you for an interview on Livin in Vegas podcast. I'm Sherman Ray for Livin in Vegas podcast, where we talk about the people, the places, the trends, and the events that shape the city of Las Vegas. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much once again for being a part of the show, everybody. So we're going to be ending the show, and as many of you know, we generally, maybe 15 minutes of the show in the mornings, but we want to encourage you, if you would like to be a part of the Livin in Vegas podcast, love to do a story about you. If you'd like to help us underwrite the show, because it costs money to do the show, definitely contact us at advertising@livininvegas.com. We'd love to get you on the show. Okay. So we're working on some really cool stuff coming up, and you want to be a part of this, folks. I really encourage you. Get on board with Livin in Vegas now, before I become famous and snooty. I would never. I've never been snooty in my life. But if I was, I'd probably do it now. No, I won't. I would never become snooty. Anyways, we will see you again tomorrow for Livin in Vegas podcast, where we'll talk about the people, the places, the trends, the events that shape the city of Las Vegas, folks. When you think of Livin in Vegas, think living local. For those of you who'd like to watch the rest of the show, definitely go over to our website at livininvegas.com. Once again, all you've got to do is QR code. The QR code's right here above my head here. Go over to that website and you can actually check out all of the shows and a whole lot more on our Livin in Vegas website. Okay? Anyways, this has been Sherman Ray. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. All right. Well, welcome back, folks. This is Sherman Ray. And I want to welcome all you folks that are continuing to watch the podcast. We've had a lot of people ask, they go, Sherman, I don't have time to, watch the whole show. Can I download it? Can I just get the audio? Well, sure, you definitely can do that. You can actually go to Spotify. I'll put another QR code for our Spotify page also, and you can download the entire show on Spotify, or just go to Spotify and Google in Livin in Vegas podcast on Spotify. It'll take you right to it. We're the number one. There's several other people who do a Vegas podcast, but we are the number one podcast that there is. So you can do the audio, you can do the video, either one you want. Could definitely do that. So many of you know that in the news lately, there have been stories about mass shootings, and October 1, we had the biggest shooting incident in Nevada history. And that just happened, I don't remember how many years ago it was now. It's still fairly fresh in everybody's mind. Well, the hospitals in Las Vegas are doing reenactments. I shouldn't say reenactments. They're doing drills to prepare themselves for mass casualty surges. And UMC, the University of Nevada, or University Medical Center, Clark County's public hospital, held a drill on Tuesday to prepare for a surge of patients in the emergency room. And this is big. So what happened during the UMC October 1, it was a nightmare, is a gunman went up to how many floors he was up, but he was down at the end of the Mandalay Bay area, and he went up during a country and western concert and opened up a window and just started firing down on the public, just firing down on people. And you can imagine the amount of people that were hurt, killed, maimed, just freaking out. And nobody was equipped. Nobody planned for such a mass thing to happen. So what happened? Ubers, cabs, bicycles, motorcycles, taxis, fire department, police, all took those people who were hit, and there were hundreds of them, to UMC, which is our only trauma center in the city. They went to every hospital there was. They were being shuttled back and forth, and it overwhelmed the people over at UMC, and it overwhelmed our entire system. So our people here in the Valley have been this has been top of mind that this could happen again, especially when you're seeing people, different parts of the country where this is happening again, where you're having these mass shootings. And what do you do? So bravo to the people who are heading this up, because the October 1 thing, 58 people died. I mean, there was a lot of people who died, and there was a lot more people who were just shot. This guy was just raining down bullets, okay? I think it was about 400 people. About 400 people were actually wounded during this whole thing. Just a mass shooting, so it was just crazy. So let's move on to another story. There is a guy, this is Javon, is that his name? Javon Ferguson. Plays for the Vegas Nighthawks. That is our IFL, or Indoor Football League team. He is not just a player, he's also an entrepreneur. And this is a very cool story, which proves a lot to me. It just proves that we've just got so many talented people here in Las Vegas. He said after the 2020 draft, the world kind of shut down. And he says, you know what? I had to make a living, and I really wanted to begin to work in the giftings that the Lord gave me. And so Javon started a business, and his business is called Dream Villas. Dream Villas, I think it's Dream Villas. Yeah. Um, and so Dream Villa Designs. And what he does, he said he started out doing just little rehabs here, rehabs there. And then it went from doing small jobs to bigger jobs, to really big jobs, $1 million homes. And he said he's got homes in Louisiana. So he started in Louisiana, and then he moved to Virginia, Houston, and California, and now he's here in Vegas. And so he's doing some cool stuff here, which is great. He said that some of the stuff that he learned in football, he is now using in his business: time management, discipline, drive, that kind of stuff. And really, you can. It's just an amazing thing that you can actually do to continue moving forward. And so, congratulations, Mr. Ferguson. You're doing a great job. We thank you so much for what you're doing. Hey, let's move on to a really important story, and it's not that this guy is important, because he's so important. But last night I was watching the Las Vegas Aces playing the Mercury. Oh gosh, this was a tough game, folks. And look at the look on Asia's face. It was a tough game. It was such a tough game that the Aces pulled it out. We came from 12 points behind at one point, and we ended up winning the game. So this was a tough game. We beat them. What was the final score? 86-74. And tough game. I watched this game all the way up to the fourth quarter, excuse me. Thinking hockey, getting my sports analogies screwed up. And we were back and forth, foul trouble. Kelsey's hitting from all over the place. And it was just a fantastic game. Becky Hammond is proving her worth as a coach. Now, I'm not saying anything bad about Bill Laimbeer, but Becky Hammond, who's our new basketball coach, comes from the NBA, so she comes from the pros, and she is instilling in the girls. Now, this is important. You can have talent, because last year, arguably, the Aces were the most talented, deep roster team there was, but they were not able to pull it out and win the championship. And a lot of that has to do with your coaching. I know it sounds harsh, but it's the truth. Becky Hammond, who comes from the NBA as a coach, is instilling in the girls a never quit mentality. When you're down 12 points, the obvious thing for, especially if you're in less than men's pro basketball, is to give up. I mean, it is what it is. I'm not being misogynistic. I'm not being, it's just what it is. But Becky Hammond has been playing in the pros, and she told these ladies, do not give up. Don't give up. And they clawed their way. I watched this, folks. Every time they would get behind, the Aces would get behind, because the Mercury were doing good. There's no doubt about it. They were shooting. They were not missing nothing. But we've the most talented crew of people that's out there. We just need the heart and the will to go on and not quit. And that's why we won. Yes, we did. I was so happy when I woke up and I saw that score. I was like, oh my gosh, we actually won. This is so very cool. Let's end on another really high note here, folks. Many of you heard about the barrels, the 55-gallon barrels that were found out in Lake Mead. And as there were human remains found in one of the barrels, and they figured what had happened is that somebody was killed back in the 70s, 80s, and they dumped them out in the Lake Mead area. There's a family out in, I think they're in Clarksville, Tennessee, and they have been looking for answers to a murder that happened some 30 years ago. Christine Huffman has been watching about information about her dad who died. His name is Christopher. And could this be her dad who had died as a child. And so Christine was 9 years old when she first heard about her biological dad. So this is how the story goes. Um, she was born 11 days after his body was the son, I guess. She was born 11 days after his body was discovered in the lake, which means she relies almost entirely on the memories of others to find out about this body. So they said that she's only seen pictures of her father, but there's no doubting her resemblance and the resemblance of the kids to the man they never met. So what they're doing right now, folks, is they're looking to see if this body, they're going to do some DNA, some testing, and there might be, after all these years, wouldn't that be great? I mean, wouldn't that be just fantastic if they could actually get some closure on this whole thing and be able to just bring a close to this whole thing? I mean, I think it'd be great. Let's do one more story. Okay? In the news lately, folks, has been the story about the baby formula shortage that is across the nation. Well, did you know Las Vegas ranks at the very last of metropolitan areas in our ability to get baby formula? This is almost a crazy story. Of all stories, right? Of all things we're dealing with here in the state of Nevada, baby formula, and I'm so blessed. I feel so bad for parents. Usually, so when I was 16, do I have time to tell the whole story? Yeah, I do. When I was 16, we had gas shortages, so that's why I hated Jimmy Carter. Because I was just learning to drive. We have gas shortages, okay? And so, and of course, we don't have gas shortage. We have a manufacturing shortage, but we don't have a gas shortage anywhere in the world. So now, many, many years later, we have a baby formula shortage. And luckily for me, my kids are all been grown for years now. So I don't have to deal with the baby formula, but a lot of parents in the Vegas Valley do. So of the 10 metro areas that have been the worst baby formula shortage, let's start Pittsburgh, okay, number 10. Buffalo or Rochester, Buffalo, Memphis, San Antonio, Phoenix, Richmond, Charlotte. Number 3 is Nashville. Number 2 is Houston. The number 1 state with the worst shortage of baby formula, Las Vegas. 52.75%. We're literally, you could go to a place looking for baby formula and probably, you got a 50-50 chance you're probably not going to find it. Places with the best baby formula, Denver, Colorado has the best. So 26.3% of the time, you're probably not going to find baby formula in Denver. So we've got some ways to go. This is a shortage that can be solved, and hopefully they will figure this out before it gets just ridiculous, because there's nothing worse than to try to find baby formula and your little childrens are just whining and screaming about it. Anyways, excuse me. If you'd like to, I'm so glad you're here, folks, but if you'd like to watch the rest of this video, if you'd like to get the whole thing, go to our website, livinvegas.com/show, and you can actually watch the entire thing. And if you're on our YouTube channel, please, folks, right now, right over here, ding that little subscribe button and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can be updated every time we upload a show. And we will see you again tomorrow, folks, for the Livin in Vegas podcast, where we talk about the people, the places, the trends, the events that shape the city of Las Vegas. When you think of living in Vegas, folks, think of living local. I'm your host, Sherman Ray. We'll see you again tomorrow, 8:30 in the morning, for the Livin in Vegas podcast. Bye-bye.